Tonight, we're going to be talking about how and why certain plant combinations really pop the eye. We will dive deep into elements of pairing so that we understand A, what we are looking for, and B, why we like what we like. Hopefully you will get some ideas for spring and beyond. I am Caitlin. I can't even say my own name. I am Caitlin Frankie Boyle, owner of Dirtiva Gardens, a full-service landscape design firm in Chatham, New Jersey. I specialize in naturalistic gardens, largely because I love unexpected garden moments that stop me in my tracks. Where you walk into a forest and it's all a surprise. It's like, wow, that's fantastic. As opposed to something that, is sort of obviously fantastic, like a perfectly planted English garden, though I do love those too. Anyway, unique plant combinations have that power. So artful combinations really make two plants greater than the sum of their parts. It's just like when wine is perfectly paired with food, it becomes a whole other experience, altogether. I still remember my Christmas Eve dinner at Jockey Hollow Restaurant in Morristown. It was sublime, and it was all because the wine brought the food to a whole new level. And pairings really are what design is all about, which things go together and make a statement. And landscape design is like any other design. The closest I can think of is interior decorating. You analyze the same elements: color, texture, flow, utility. I like to call what I do exterior design. One of my decorator friends put it simply, I do the inside, she does the outside. Today, we're going to look at key concepts for combining plants, as well as go deep on 15 plant combinations. Most of the combinations are from my projects, but I have also culled some of my favorites from friends and websites. The cornerstone of garden design is contrast. When there is a sea of sameness in a bed, you really can't see the individual pieces. It all looks like one big green blob. When the shapes and sizes and colors contrast off each other, it helps make the plants viewable. It also makes it enjoyable, as those combinations excite the eye. This picture is a good overview of different ways that plants contrast. Here, look at the two plant shapes on the left. The iris is vertical and sharp. The phlox is mounded and soft. The boxwood has small round leaves, and the hosta behind it has large ones. That's a very easy and satisfying contrast with the small with the large. It just pops every time. All the colors are complementary on the color wheel. So this one is a masterclass. Almost everything in here is green, and yet the textures and the leaf shapes make it as interesting as any big color garden. From the toothy leaf of the Astilbe on the upper left, to the heart-shaped leaf of the Brunera on the lower left, to the feathery fern on the upper right, and the spiky pulmonaria in the middle. This is what we're going for. This is not mine, although I wish it was. I didn't get my head around this kind of contrast until about 5 years ago. My friend and I were staring at a garden bed, scratching our heads as to why an area didn't look good. What is it? It was vexing us. And then my friend said, I think we need a different leaf shape. And I was confounded, but she was right, and we fixed it. Let's dive deep into the building blocks of combinations. We'll go across the top and talk through them. Color and height are the foundations of pairing, which I think most of us really already are familiar with. From there, we go into plant shape, the vertical versus mounded, like the iris and the phlox, and then flower shape. petals versus cones, a Shasta daisy versus a coneflower, leaf size, big versus small, the boxwood and the hosta we saw before, leaf texture, feathery versus spiny, a fern versus a blue fescue. The color wheel applies to gardening too. If you don't have one, you can get one on Amazon, the Gardener's Color Wheel. I also want to say that I am not slave to the wheel. I use it as a guide, as input, or as validation. I have found it very helpful to understand why I like a combination. I can sort of spin it on the wheel and be like, oh, that's why. We have talked a lot about contrast so far, and those color schemes, but there are also harmony ones, the monochromatic ones. My friend did a great monochromatic garden, which we will see later on. It is very, very soothing. The names of the color schemes are not very intuitive, which has always bugged me. So I'm going to walk you through an illustration of what they mean. And so we're going to start with blue violets. We're going to do a pretend matching, which I think is helpful. All right, complementary, that is directly across on the color wheel. I think we've all seen some blue-orange combinations in gardens and know how great they look together. I have that combination and try to repeat it as much as possible. More on orange and hot colors later, but this is really the most fundamental pairing, is the direct opposite, the complementary. Next is the split complementary. So from the blue violet, we're going towards the yellows and the reds. And these are also great combinations. Blue and yellow is terrific. And then that kind of blue and a coral heading towards red is great. And we're going to see the role of blue and red later on in the presentation as a cooling versus a hot color element. Then there's a triad, which are all equally spaced around the color wheel. So the blue violets, the pinks, and the yellow greens. And that ends the contrast piece of it. Then the next two coming up are the harmony. There's the analogous, which are 3 to 5 colors adjacent to each other on the wheel, as well as the monochromatic, which is a single color combined with all its hues, like an all blue violet garden with all the different elements within that. And that is harmony. Other color schemes, can be grouped into hot versus cool. Hot with the reds, the yellows, the oranges, and the blues, and the grays and the whites of a cool color scheme. Most people are cool colors. I started that way, but then my mother and good friend changed all that. And wait till you see my friend's blazing red beach wonder coming up. Height. All right, the standard rule is really all about viewability. So low in the front and high in the back, so you can, see what you're looking at. But this is being stretched everywhere. Referencing, the tiered seating at arenas, my professor at the Botanical Garden issued, a call to arms. No more stadium planting. Like, okay, what are we supposed to do now? But the truth is that there are all kinds of now modern, naturalistic plantings where that does actually happen. And I'll show you that coming up. I do a lot of meadows, and there are low grasses and then higher perennials coming up through, which is kind of exactly what he's saying with the stadium planting. All right, let's dive into the combinations. On the slides, they're organized by season. So you will see the season in the upper left-hand side. The plant names are all in Latin, so there is no confusion if you go looking for one of these at the nursery. And I will use common names when talking kind of interchangeably, and I'm happy to answer questions on that. I mean, it's all Latin, so, you know, it does get a little wonky sometimes. This one hits a lot of points. First, the color. The yellow of the Echinocloa, the Japanese forest grass, and the purple of the Salvia, direct opposites on the color wheel, right? You can see that on the mini wheel down below. You know, it's textbook. And then there's the height. The grass is low and spills forward. The Salvia is taller and shoots right up through it. Then the plant shape. The grass is mounded and the salvia is vertical. I mean, this is sort of right out of the the combination class in school, and it's great. I mean, it's the kind of thing that has stopping power. Like you couldn't really walk by that without turning around. It's not mine. I wish it was, but you know what? I'm going to put it in someone's garden this summer. This one is not as intentional as the one before. This happened more organically. Oh, I should say that this is in my garden. So it's a bit of more of a mess. So it's not as intentional, and it kind of came together as a bed often does, with certain things dying and new things coming in. And then one day I walked by it and it just blew my socks off. It is literally all over the color wheel. There's complementary colors, there's analogous colors. The deep purple of the Salvia marcus and the ice blue of the blue fescue is a fantastic combination. Then you add in the orange of the Southern Comfort heuchera or coral bell, and the yellow of the Echinocloa, and your eye just has plenty to feast on. I mean, you can kind of go around and around in this bed and still see something different each time. For texture, we have the spiny leaves of the fescue and the soft leaves of the Echinocloa, with the wide leaf of the heuchera and the pointed green leaves of the hellebores in the background. I mean, maybe it's its own little masterclass. Maybe I'll just take that credit right there. And this is to say that plenty of good combinations are accidents. So don't be afraid to roll the dice. I put this in here because it feels like we all have a dwarf Japanese maple or an Acer at our house or at our neighbor's house. And with few exceptions, they just sit there. But when they're paired with other colorful plants, they pop. So here I put a periwinkle blue salvia and a variegated yellow iris next to my maple. All of a sudden it got interesting, right? Like all of a sudden it was like, oh, hello. now there's something that's actually happening. I also use Nepeta to pop these in planting. So the gray and the purple of Nepeta really bring the red out. I think it's better when it's red. When it's like muddy, it just doesn't do anything for me. The plant shape is also key here. We've got the mounding maple and then the vertical salvia and iris. Now, hydrangeas and ferns are a classic combination, especially white hydrangeas like these oak leaves. I also do this combination with Annabelle's. First, the color combo of green and white is just so clean and crisp. And then you have the leaf texture. Here, the oak leaves are big and broad, and the fern is feathery and light and just seems to flutter up to the hydrangea's blooms. And what I like about this pairing is that it's not unique to this hydrangea and this fern. Hydrangeas and ferns in general work well together because hydrangeas do tend to have larger leaves and they're a deep green, and they contrast well with the fern foliage. So it becomes something somewhat universal, which is kind of what I'm hoping to get to in this presentation and in life, which is to give sort of tried and true tricks that you can just replicate wherever. So I was just at a talk about Black flowers and plants with my garden club, and all of a sudden it hit me why this contrast is so good. The blue agastache in the back, kind of blurry on portrait mode, is actually a black plant. I mean, I guess the name Black Adder should have been my first clue. But so look at the stem and you can see how dark it is and how it actually is black. The blue shoots out from there, contrasting so well because it's, blue and black make great partners. My epiphany was the white Shasta daisy, how it jumps out because it has black behind it, literally an unexpected black and white combination. Like I think of black and white as, I don't know, tile or something else. And yet here in this perennial bed, we're having that black and white pop, which was just really kind of fun to discover and to see. I like trying to unpack why certain combinations are really working well, and stumbling across that actually being a truly black plant, which I could have figured out from the name, was, really satisfying. So you'll see, as I mentioned before, I'm trying to give some broad combination ideas to kind of, so we can get to like a turnkey solution to a lot of this stuff. There are whole classes of plants that look great together and that you can mix and match. So here is my first example that I learned from a talk when at the New York Botanical Garden where I study. Any flower with a daisy type head, a daisy, a helenium, asters, all look great with grasses. The grasses are airy and mounding, so the small plentiful heads of those flowers look like they can fit right in between each slender leaf. I mean, that's what I see. When I look at the analysis of why they work well together, it's like that's how I interpret it. I mean, it's important to understand, context and people's own individual perceptions. It may look a different way to somebody else. I just certainly know that they are so pretty together. And there's the plant shape too, right? Those daisy type flowers are always very upright. And then there's the mounding of that grass. And this can be replicated. So a rock is a perfect foil for many plants. Its dense structure, gray tan color, nooks and crannies are a gardening canvas to build on. Here I played off the rock by mimicking its roundness with round plants. So the blue fescue and the round balls of the Allium millennium are all in the same shape family. So when you look at the rock, it ends up all looking harmonious, right? Another way to do something like this is to play off the rock's denseness with lacy ferns. And still yet another way, which I also love, is really putting the rock back in, sort of natural context. And you can take native grasses like Deschampsia, tufted hairgrass, and put it around the rock, so it could be as if it was in its natural habitat, and then bring in some plants and really pop it that way. So a rock is a good thing to have if anybody has one in their garden. Another broad rule here: any coneflower, any height, with any grass will work well. Right? It just, every time. The coneflower's vertical head and a mounded grass will pair no matter what. I like to play with height here, and this is kind of what I talked about before with the height rule and how I'm not doing it. I pair low grasses like this one here on the left. On the left and the right, I have Aconocloa, all gold, and Areola. And then in front, I have the prairie drop seed, or the Spirobolos, with the tall cone flowers that just like shoot up right through the middle. And I love that action, because when I look at it, it feels like a victory dance or something, like they're rising up from the ashes. I don't know. It just feels very joyful and very energetic. This is also a great way to do multi-season plantings in not a lot of space. So in the spring, tall allium; in the summer, cone flowers shooting up; in the fall, anemone. You will see this in a lot of places in Chatham. I love this combination so much that it is in a couple people's houses. On the topic of echinaceas, there's just, you can do all of the knockout combining you want right within this genus, right? They are great plants, and they come in a million colors, a million heights. I mean, what this is right here is a basic height and color play. I have the tall purple Magnus in the back, and the lower cream vanilla milkshakes in front. The two plants also have different cones for extra contrast. The vanilla milkshake is a double cone flower with an orange center, and the Magnus has that darker cone behind it. So you can get so much richness in just two plants. So here is the firecracker wonder I talked about from my friend. The red coneflowers and the white Shasta daisies just pop. I mean, you kind of can't not see them. I mean, they're sort of calling to you. The Crocosima at the top carries the red through from the coneflower, the hot papaya, and also provides more contrast. That spiky leaf shape and the orchid-like flowers contrast with the round heads of the Shasta daisies and the cones of those cone flowers. But what's key in here is that there's also Russian sage and some blue hydrangea, and those cool background tones, and there's not even that many of them, right? It's slight, just have enough so that it calms this in your eye line, right? And stops it from looking like scary cheerleader pom-pom, red and white, rah-rah, right? Like that gray and the blue just slows it down a little bit. And another thing to call out here is planting in mass. Not just 3, not just 5 plants. You got to go for it and commit to more. And this is something that I struggled with, because I'm always worried that, I'm not going to like something, or I don't know. But what we're doing is impact. This is what this is. I mean, we're not gardening for anything more than, well, that's not true. Impact and joy and big views are really some of the great kind of marvels of gardening. So let's just go for it. Put it in, drop it in, go 7, go 9, go 11. I mean, here she's got, I don't know what, this is like half a block of coneflowers. It's like, boom. All right, do it. Mic drop. So we have been talking a lot about contrast here, and the flip side of that is harmony, right? Flowers of the same hue. This is a great example of a monochromatic approach, which we really haven't seen yet today. My friend carefully planned the pinkish thread among all the plants, from the coneflowers in back to the sedums and the allium and the Carly Rose grass. I love tonal plantings because your eye sees the core color, but then the textures are all different, which excites the eye. It's like you see the pink, but then there's so much happening within the pink. You know, it's different than if it's like, it's a blue, it's a yellow, and your eye is sort of torn between the two. This is that core color and then everything happening within that same color. It is also, you know, very soothing to look at. And this is another example of grasses and coneflowers looking great together. The grasses plume visually kind of dips over the coneflower, and, you know, makes it look a little ethereal and gives it just a wonderful blur to it. Mardi Gras in the fall. I love this great bold color statement with all the vivid colors of fall asters. I mean, the one on top is from a website, and the one on the bottom is one that I do at my house and for clients. What I love about the top one is how it brought in the yellowing foliage of the cornus, the dogwood. It gives the combo like a vertical structure with the messy asters kind of swimming around. I mean, asters are just phenomenal plants, but they are not well behaved. They flop, they climb around, I mean, not, but I think all of us are willing to put up with a bunch of that at the end of the season when we're craving color again. I mean, I have mine on supports and leaning over things. I mean, oh God. And also a note, rabbits love asters, like love them, destroy them in milliseconds. So you have to be on your game. Another broad rule, kind of still drilling down from that same core concept: asters and grasses, any kind, any color. Here you can see, you know, the fall application of it. I think it's, you know, it's that tight head of the asters with the kind of the open airy wands of the grasses that provide the contrast. Like the asters could just slide into the air of the grasses plumes. You know, I mean, again, I've said this before, that's what I see. I mean, that's another fun thing about gardening, is when you're staring at it and you're trying to you know, figure out what it makes you feel, what it makes you see. So, you know, curious to see what you guys see in that same scenario. Also for color, the vibrant aster color plays off well against the muted soft grass plume. The picture in the bottom right comes from a friend's meadow, and she weaves in other grasses as well for just a monster fall show. It is fantastic. She said last year it wasn't as good after I begged to go again. So I'm hoping that next fall she comes around and everything is good in there. I mean, it is like out of a picture book. This again kind of stretches the height rule. This tall, airy purple plant, the Verbena bonariensis, in front is my new favorite. It goes back, you know, like I said, to stretching that height rule. It's tall. It's almost like 4 feet, but it's not relegated to the back. You can put it in the middle. It actually looks best there because while it is tall, it's also see-through. So you can kind of peer through your garden. It becomes kind of a framework for you to see the rest of your garden through. And you can do that with some grasses too. There is a purple moorgrass that you can do that with as well. And it's kind of fun. It's like you're putting on different glasses to look at your garden with. My favorite way to, not my favorite, one of the ways I used these a lot this summer was to pair them with Karl Forster grass, the Calamagrostis, because they both had that great airy feel, and they sort of swayed together really nicely. You can also see here the plays on height throughout this planting, which really gives it a rolling feel. It really is about the view. I mean, how you look at it, how you come upon it, and how you can or cannot see it. Rather than that hard and fast rule of tall in the back, low in the front. So red and green are right across from each other on the color wheel, but somehow I never thought of them as planting partners until I saw this. Another accident, as we had talked about. But, I previously, I thought red and green is like, oh, okay, so I'll just do a traffic light in the backyard. Like it just never, it just didn't seem like it would be that pretty. But I had a wet area in the back and I knew the hostas would do well. And the ITEA was right there. And that's literally the amount of thought I put into it, right? It's like, it's wet. I'm going to put a plant that's not happy and dry over to wet. And I'm going to, and then, one fall day, I look out my office window and I see this green red pop way at the end of the garden. And it was just like, calling. And the colors are complementary, right? But also the leaf size makes the combination work, right? It's got the big leaves of the hosta sum and substance, and then the smaller leaves of the ITEA. And I feel like sum and substance really does, garner or call a lot of attention to itself because it is so big with that lime. And that's why the ITEA behind it kind of, matches it in its way. So yeah, I'm now repeating this everywhere. If you aren't following Acres Wild Garden Design on Instagram, you absolutely should be. Their profile photo is down on the right. They make really spectacular designs. And from what I can tell, they have some really killer accounts like castles and stuff in England. This is one of theirs, and it's brilliant, really, in its simplicity. It's the winter red stems of Cornus dogwood paired with with the white bark of the birch betula. It is such a simple planting and so striking, even with and I like it's not even like one that's huge. I mean, there's only 5 birch in here, right? And there's enough to make that kind of a show. That's kind of how showy it is. So, and this can go through the seasons, right? So in the spring, the dogwood will have green or variegated leaves, depending. And the summer, that's the same. Then the fall, we get those yellow leaves. And then in the winter, we have this, which is just bonkers. So I'm on the hunt. I'm looking for a client who wants to do this. This combination to me is all about texture. We have the coarse small leaf of the climbing hydrangea, and the lacy leaf of the ghost fern, and the delicate hydrangea flower, which I love. It always looks like it should be in a bridal wreath. This is all green and white, but there's enough contrast so that you can see each element. It also is another great example of ferns and hydrangeas being really good partners. This picture I posted on my Instagram, and it went everywhere, and on Facebook too. It was one of those pictures that, I mean, I ended up in some Summit moms group. I don't know. I got all kinds of good calls from it. But it was just surprising. I don't think you ever know kind of what's going to go where like that. And I'm happy it was this one. And this is our last pairing, and then I'll take questions. This is one I'm rolling out this summer. I got the idea from a talk I went to. It is the deep red of Ligularia Britt Marie Crawford. I love Ligularia, love, because of the shape of the leaf. And then the limey yellow of Sporea Ogon, also known as mellow yellow, as well as the leaf texture and size, right? That's a big Ligularia leaf, and then that feathery Ogon texture, almost like an Amsonia Hebrectii, if you guys know that one. And I'm really excited. I've been eyeing this at the nursery for a long time, and now I'm excited to get it. So I'll keep you all posted on on how that combination does, but I have high hopes. All right, so I'm gonna move over to the questions section.